Happy Monday, everybody. Is it Monday? Yeah, it's Monday, December 3rd, 2018. This is the December 2018 forecast, people. Wow, Mars is rising. My third house, social media. I love it. Um, anyways, let's see here. 6 people are watching. Hello. I am watching this chat window. So, yeah, that means that if you want to send me a message or a question, then you can do that. Um, I'll likely take questions at the end, but you can comment while I am doing this video. So, this month is really funny. It's like a bridge month. We had one of those. August into September was a bridge month. Like, you notice how, like, we got out of August, September was like Venus entered Libra the first day, and then like Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, like, took over the news. Astrology is so literal. Venus is women, right? So most of October, we have been in a Scorpio mode. Yeah, it's been whack. Scorpio mode is stuff I've talked about. I feel like a broken record, y'all. Yeah. So the reason why I feel like a broken record is I've been going live on Instagram, and I have been tweeting on Twitter ad nauseum about Scorpio. I'm going to try my best not to rant and preach because it's a long video. I got to save my energy. But I do want to start. No, let me stop. Let's not start there. Let me read my notes. All right, notes. Scorpio brings up a lot of stuff from 2015, 2016, and 2017. So I posted a tweet back in some month like August talking about how the last quarter of 2018 was going to be where 2014, 15, and 16 came to meet. I should have said 2015, 16, and 17, and later in another tweet I corrected myself, but 2015, 2016, and 2017. And let me tell you how some of y'all have already started to feel it. Like, I am only a messenger. My job is just to like relay the message to you, so it's not really my fault that we're revisiting stuff from those years. But at the same time, like, you can be forewarned and forearmed. Good example today, moon is in Libra, right? We're about to take a deep dive into the abyss of Scorpio with this new moon on Thursday, December 7th, right? Friday, something like that. Friday, December 7th. We're about to take a deep dive into all this Scorpio stuff. And all of this Scorpio stuff is bringing up old stuff that you really don't want to deal with and that you thought you got away from. But just because like you turned off the light and closed your eyes doesn't mean it disappeared. Or maybe because you got really far away from it physically that you think it went away. Or maybe if you just ignore it, right? Plug your ears, la, 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 it'll go away. No, that's not really how these things work. Like, when you have issues that need to be dealt with, you have to face them square on. Now look, Scorpio is really good at like if I just hide in this corner, no one will see me and I'll be safe. That's great. You need that. You need to be able to protect yourself. You need to be able to preserve your body and well-being. You need to be able to feel the feels, because feeling the feels is like, hey girl, you scared, what you gonna do? Who's coming to get you? You gonna hide? You gonna get your knife? You gonna, load up your gun? You're gonna run away? What are you gonna do, right? You need to be able to do those things. But when Jupiter enters a sign, the story changes. So we're gonna come back to that when I talk about the new moon in Scorpio, but that is a big picture of December. Again, big picture is 2015, 2016, and 2017, all having un petit rendezvous in your life. Okay? Also happening this month, if the drama wasn't already high with all of this Scorpio, Sagittarius, right? The sun enters Sagittarius this month, which means eclipse season begins. What is eclipse season? Eclipse season is when the triggers begin. I'll talk more about that towards the end of this video, or whenever we get to this Sagittarius eclipse season thing. Other than that, Mercury and Venus will not change signs this month. Mercury and Venus have been in their signs pretty much well, Venus has been in Libra since September, all of October, all of November, and all of December. Are y'all sick of Libra yet? I am. I'll tell you why later. And then Mercury has been in Scorpio for a really long time, and it's going to stay there until the end of this year, end of this month. So, sorry, such is life. Sun and Mars do change sign, and they start easing us into major, ginormous, in flashing lights, spotlight on it, 2019 themes, which is mutable madness. That gives me a proper segue to talk to you about something that I've been working on for you. Let me show you. You ready? Here it is, guys. You see that? Let me do it this way, this way. That is the cover of the 2019 Eclipse Guide. Okay. Why did I do this? Because I've been trying to be a little bit more proactive and productive around my predictions and forecasting for year-long trends, right? That means that over the past few months, I've been collecting notes in my phone, in my notebook, on Twitter, in Google documents about eclipses in 2019. Why? Because when it comes to marking time with astrology, there are these kind of themes and astrological events that occur in ways that really are defining, right? They really define for us very clearly demarcated shifts, okay? So all of 2018, we've been in what I've called cardinal convergence. Cardinal convergence means who is going to control how we progress. Is it going to be based upon existing perceived limitations or real limitations, Capricorn? Are we going to come up with a new consensus that takes into consideration the wills of all the parties involved, which is Libra? Are we going to allow our biological needs and our familial tribal ties to define that? Or are we going to do whatever we want because we can, right? That's Capricorn, Libra, Cancer, and Aries, respectively. But I'll talk about this more as we get into the forecast. But mutable madness is what I'm calling 2018. I actually have two names for it: mutable madness and redefining truth. Both of those are major parts of the content of this guide. So what is the 2019 Eclipse Guide? The 2019 Eclipse Guide breaks down what mutable madness is. It explains to you how the four mutable signs work together and what they mean for our lives personally in our natal charts, as well as collectively as we move through these different transits in 2019. It helps you to understand what an eclipse is, why is it different than a new or full moon, and then I've got two essays or articles. My editing partner described them as devotionals, right? They are devotionals on redefining truth and integrity and accountability. Those are the themes of 2019. They're in this guide, and I will be making them available for digital download and print on my store, shop.thepeoplesoracle.com, and you will be able to download, and you will be able to order a printed copy of that beginning the week before Christmas. Okay, so that's like the 16th or something like that. Now, let us move on to the forecast here. Ooh, did my video stop? No, it never started. Oh, let's move on to the forecast here. All right. First up was that December already started, so I'm kind of late, but y'all know this. I'm late because whatever, life. Anyways, December 2nd, Sun in Scorpio. Oh, let me take this off the screen. Hold on. There we go. Now you can see the dates. And you'll notice, let me just point this out. All of the colors here that you see in my little graphic over there on the side of the screen, this is giving you a preview of what the 2019 Sidereal Astrology Guide looks like. That there are these color-coded significations or markings to help you see a bigger picture. So you'll notice that everything that is happening in Scorpio in this list here, which is a Mars ruled sign, is red. So that tells us a whole lot of stuff is happening in Scorpio, right? We know that Mars is kind of boss. So that if you were like looking in the guide, you would go to the page that says planets, and then you would go to Mars and see, well, what does Mars mean? What does Mars represent? How does that relate to what I'm focusing on in my life or what I'm observing out in the world? So when we look at the the December 2018 horoscope table here, we see that the month started off with a square from the sun in Scorpio to Mars in Aquarius. I talked about that sign square a lot in the November forecast, and I've talked about it a lot on Instagram and Twitter, but I do want to take a moment to talk about it again, and maybe in a little bit of a different way, because it still is an active square, meaning that Mars is in Aquarius until the 23rd and planets are in Scorpio all month, right? Mercury doesn't leave until the end of the month. So that is still a very active square. And even though the aspects that define that square have already happened, it's kind of like the events didn't go away, and there's a lasting impact that is still much part of the conversation. One of the things that I've been talking about a lot with regard to squares between Aquarius and Scorpio, and this is important for those of you who have these signs occupied in your sidereal chart. If you don't know what your sidereal birth chart looks like, I have created a guide that helps you use astro.com to erect that chart. So at some point you can go to thepeoplesoracle.com and click sidereal birth chart, which is in the menu bar, and you follow those instructions. It's very important that you use whole sign houses, because if you don't, none of what I say will make sense. Okay? Especially if you're using like my 2019 sidereal astrology guide or the eclipse guide. So anyways, one of the things that I've been talking about with Scorpio and Aquarius is who is going to control how we sustain ourselves and how we preserve ourselves. Now, fixed signs are 4 signs: Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus. And each of these are trying to preserve something. So whereas the cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, are trying to progress and bring change and move things forward, fixed signs are trying to preserve and sustain and maintain. So I want you to think of this in really literal terms. When we're talking about fixed water, which is Scorpio, anytime we're talking about water, we're talking about biology. I don't want you to think about, feelings, because when you really think of feelings, you're thinking of the names that we give feelings, and then how the names for those feelings control or determine how we perceive those feelings. I want you to think of water signs, which are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, as biology. The biology is, what is the physiological response in your body that happens when you have an experience, think of something, or see something. So for Scorpio, we're talking about preserving the actual system of your body. We're preserving the actual sensate system of your body, preserving the right to feel. The right to feel is important, because when you cannot feel, you cannot preserve your own life and body. When you cannot feel, you do not know that there is danger, because your teeth don't clench, your heart doesn't race, right? Excuse me. Your heart doesn't start beating faster, or your muscles don't clench up because you're ready to fight or you're ready to run, right? So there has to be something that allows us to preserve that feeling, to preserve that right to feel. And preserving that feeling and that right to feel is what Scorpio articulates, as well as preserving our physical body, right? Our entitlement to life and body. So that's the Scorpio side. The Taurus side, right? These two signs work together, because there is a survival mechanism that puts us on the defense, right? That makes us recoil, that makes us erect boundaries, that allows us to adapt so that we can in some way be more cognizant of what is a threat and what is not a threat. But the other way that we survive is the Taurus side, and that's by conforming and assimilating. So we make our outside look like how everybody expects us and wants us to look, so that we're not ostracized, right? We all have a need to belong. We all have a need to be accepted. Being accepted means that you have access to the things that you need to survive. If you are ostracized, people withhold things from you. They withhold touch, they withhold their love, they withhold resources, they withhold anything that your body needs, right? So that when you have fixed signs, strong, prominent, and dominant in your chart, this conversation of, am I going to conform or am I going to be on the defensive? Am I going to make my outside look like how they want me to look despite how I feel on the inside? That's Taurus, right? In order to have a survival strategy. When people do not have Taurus and instead they have lots of Scorpio, now the question becomes, it's very clear to me that who I am on the inside, how I feel in my body is not what they expect me to be, not what they want me to be, and not what I quote should be. So when you have Scorpio dominant, it's really asking the question, how do you deal with your differentness? How do you deal with your queerness? How do you deal with the fact that you, being who you are, experience your body as you experience it? How do you deal with the ways that that ostracizes you? Here comes the square from Mars in Aquarius. Air signs allow us to think about and talk about things rather than experience or feel them. And so if Scorpio is the right to preserve the feeling, the physiological body, and the feelings that we have in response to what we see and experience or think about, Aquarius is about preserving a sense of self that is determined by yourself. Right? So that's different from Leo, because Leo takes everything personally, and it's important to do that in the scheme of personal development. It's important to take things personally in the sense of saying, I can have an impact on my environment around me, right? So that whatever is in my world, whatever is happening in my world is a reflection of me. And so when I'm just switching screens here if you see me moving. So when something happens in my world, I have authority over my world. I have dominion over my world. So I can say what goes, right? Now the issue comes when you as a person come under the authority and dominion of someone or something else. And that authority and dominion of that person gets to decide your world. Here's a really good example. I've seen this over and over in charts with my clients who have Leo dominant. Leo is the home of the sun, and like the sun, we can take for granted the impact that the sun has on us. Right now, obviously the sun is light and it allows us to see and it allows plants to grow. But what we sometimes miss out on in observation is that colors appear how they appear because of the frequency of light that the sun emits mixed with the frequencies that our eyes can perceive, right? So that the only reason this couch is red is because the light allows us to see this is red and our eyes can perceive it. So Leo is like this light. Leo is shaping and framing and determining how we see and perceive things. So that people who have Leo dominant and prominent in their chart, there is a man, right, an authority figure in their life who has determined their lives. For example, there is a client I've had who, and actually there's more than one client like this. I've seen this in several clients' charts where their father was in the military. Right. And so on a personal interaction, day-to-day kind of thing, they weren't very interactive or maybe even close with their father. But because their father was in the military, they got up and moved every few years. And so the father was literally determining where they put down roots, what kinds of friends they had, what schools they went to, the climate that they were in. Right? Because of the father and his job, he was determining their reality in this really, really, really big way. Why am I talking about this, right? There's nothing in Leo right now. There's nothing happening in Leo right now. I'm talking about this because on December 6th, Mercury is going to station direct, and it's really already moving very slow and triggering these things. But on December 6th, Mercury is going to station direct at 3 degrees Scorpio. So let's bridge the gap between that Sun square Mars that was on the 2nd and this Mercury direct thing. Aquarius says, I have a right to see myself how I see myself and name myself as I name myself. I'm entitled to have an idea or conceptual understanding of myself that exists separate from how empire, how systems of power, how authority figures name me. Okay? So that means that even though, for example, let's stick with the example I have, even though dad may be in the military and he's determining my reality, I don't have to be a military brat. I don't have to be a military child. I'm not in the military, right? So I get to say who I am, what I am, and name myself. Okay. If you want to know more about that, go to my Twitter page, search the People's Weekly Forecast, and look at the forecast from last week. So that would have been like November 26th or something like that. I talk about that. You can also go to my Instagram page, and I've talked a lot about that in. Oh yeah, matter of fact, I have an Instagram post where the image says Sun Square Mars. Go read that. That'll give you more. So let's bridge the gap here. Mercury is stationing direct at 3 degrees Scorpio. And the reason I'm talking about Leo and Taurus and Aquarius, even though there's nothing in Leo and there's nothing in Taurus, is because Mercury is stopping, moving forward, to resolve something. That's what a direct station of Mercury means. A direct station of any planet means we are stopping. Well, I take that back because it's a little bit different for, say, Jupiter or Saturn because they move so slow. But especially for Venus and Mercury and even Mars, a direct station means to stop, move forward, and resolve. That's in contrast to a retrograde station, which means to stop, move backwards, and revisit something. So we've already stopped, moved backward, and began revisiting something. And you can look back to 2016, you can look back to 2015 and 2017 to see what it is that you are reviewing. What is it that you're going back to revisit? Now, what is Mercury in Scorpio? This is a little bit different. Mercury in Scorpio means that Mars is in charge of Mercury. So anytime a planet's not at home, for Mercury that would be in Virgo or Gemini, it means that whatever Mercury represents functions as an end, or rather, functions as a means to something else. So if Mercury is language, it's words, it's articulation, symbols, translation, and interpretation, then all of those things exist as a means to Mars. They don't function for their own end. So we're not writing to communicate. We are not calculating to solve problems. We are not articulating to get our point across. That would be Mercury at home in Gemini and Virgo. We are articulating in order to preserve our life, body, and well-being. We are calculating, interpreting, and translating as a means to self-preservation and emotional autonomy. This is really, really a tricky placement because now language is not used to be clear or to be honest or to articulate or communicate necessarily. Language is used as a means to preserve the body. This is a difficulty of Mercury in any water signs, in that now a person's use of language is secondary to their biology. So people who have Mercury in water signs like Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio can have difficulty getting their point across in verbal communication. Why? Because in that moment, the instinctual responses of their body take over, even though their mind may have another way to conceptualize something. So my advice for people with Mercury in water signs, you got to write stuff down. Write stuff down, right? Before you have difficult conversations with people, write stuff down. Before you figure out what you want to say or how you want to communicate, write stuff down. Writing stuff down gives you an opportunity to consider and put some distance between yourself and your feelings, so that if you go back and read it, it might actually make you cringe because you're like, that's not even what I really meant, right? That's not really what I really want to say. So Mercury in Scorpio in the present moment, though, is reflected in a lot of the fiery rhetoric that we've been seeing. And fiery is not the right word because it's not really fiery. It's defensive and aggressive, right? Defensive and aggressive in the sense that people who feel threatened are using their words to communicate the fear that they feel, right? So obviously, we see Donald Trump doing this on Twitter. I mean, it's gotten out of control at this point. But also, many of us have been communicating with others in our lives in a way that reflects a defensiveness or that reflects our hesitance to trigger threats to our survival, rejection, ostracization, um, even offending other people sometimes. That's kind of a catch-22. So Mercury, I have some dates here. These are going to be fun for you. Not really fun, but you get my point. This hat is by Shop Vintage Boutique, though. Just, in case you wanted to know. Anyways, Mercury stations direct at 3 degrees Scorpio on December 6th. The dates that I have here that this refers back to, July 2015. Mm-hmm. And let's just say the summer of 2015, because really it was like 8 or 12 weeks where Saturn was just sitting right at 4 degrees Scorpio, so conjunct where Mercury is stationing direct now. So just be thinking about what was going on for you in July, August, September-ish of 2015. And some of those themes might be recurring. Some of those stories might be progressing, or whatever the feeling, mindset you were in at that time might be ready for you to move forward and resolve that. Summer of 2016. That is going to come back again. When did I write that down? 2016 comes back at the end of the month with the Mercury again. All up in our business. Dang. So summer of 2016, really starting in April, we had Saturn in Scorpio and Mars was retrograde in Scorpio. So you'll notice that we connect threads when something is happening in the same sign, right? Especially when something like a retrograde or eclipse is triggered, which is what happens August 21st, 2017. There was an eclipse at 4 degrees Leo, right? Square the point. Again, why am I bringing up Leo? Because of this thing. So that there is kind of something etched in your Leo house, right? Somewhere, and this is important. Leo is about doing 3 things. Whether it's the house in your chart, planets that you have there natally, or transits happening there, which is not happening now, but it did happen in 2017. So there's something etched there. But Leo is teaching us or talks to us about 3 things. Obviously, it's talking to us about authority figures, but it's talking to us about succeeding the throne, meaning that we see that wonderful authority figure, or we envy the power that they have wielded over us and in the world, and we want to become them. And so we do everything that we can to live up to that example. That's one way Leo manifests in a person's chart, life by transit, whatever. The second way is we want to overthrow that person. We see that Leo-like figure, that father, that grandfather, that authority figure at our job, that husband, right? We look at them and we say that, you know what, you're not the boss of me, right? So I need to dethrone you. I need to overthrow you. Third, we look for a replacement, right? So we do not feel capable, or maybe we just don't want to fill the shoes of being that dominant authority in our lives. Maybe culturally or socially, it is not appropriate for us to take that role. And so we seek to replace that authority figure via a husband or any other men that may enter our life. We kind of say, okay, now you're the authority, now you're on the pedestal. And this isn't something that we always do by choice or consciously, but this is something that I have seen repeatedly in the charts of people who have Leo. So that when we had that eclipse in Leo on August 21st, 2017, there truly in earnest began the story of how are we going to overthrow the authority who has taken over in our country, right? So we've seen in other countries where, like Mexico, they've elected this populist president. I don't know if it's a president, prime minister. They've elected this populist guy. Venezuela is trying to overthrow this person. Emmanuel Macron, who was elected in 2017, he's dealing with people who want to overthrow him, right? He succeeded the quote throne, and they gave him the authority, and now they're like, never mind, you're not really doing what I want you to do with that. So we can think about in our personal lives, who are people that we have put on a pedestal? Who are people who have had authority in our lives, either by their position, like being our father, boss, or husband, or because we have handed over that authority to them, right? Scorpio now comes to say that your survival is more important than their authority. And so the way that you dethrone them, or the way that you take control, or the way that you preserve your life and body is by not being afraid to feel. You didn't see that coming, did you? Why? Why is it so important to feel? Why is it important for Scorpio to feel? Why are we visiting? Why are we stopping, right? After having going back and revisited, I know some of you all have, why are we stopping to move forward and resolve this thing, right? It's important that you not be afraid to feel, because that is the way that you allow yourself to see things, perceive things separate from the way authority figures deem they should be. I'm talking about Trump because he's Leo rising. He's got Mars in Leo. He's got Moon in Scorpio, right? He's got this whole thing going on in his chart where he's trying to dethrone his father, right? He's trying to be as big, as bad, and great as his father was, right? And so he thinks that he wants to overtake the throne. He's like, I can be him, right? So he's spending his whole entire life like, right, and he's still just like woefully inadequate. But I'm using him as an example because we can all observe him, and everyone in the world right now is affected by his authority, right? This is Leo, right? They get into the position of being an authority and they get to determine things, right? So he says ... and the news all over the world is like, Trump said ... And so we're like, where's ... right? Diverting our attention and taking the focus off of what our bodies, taking the focus off of what our feelings. And so now our feelings become a reaction to what we think this person is doing, what we perceive that person is saying or doing, instead of figuring out how we feel separate from that lens. So this is what all of this Scorpio stuff is coming to resolve. The next day, there's a new moon in Scorpio at 21 degrees. So by December 7th, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, all in Scorpio. Talk about water and taking a deep dive into the abyss and feeling all the feelings. They're talking about the furnace in the hallway and it's distracting me. Anyways, so, right, I have another date here for you, right? I keep talking about all of this Scorpio stuff taking us back to 2015, 2016, and 2017. This new moon in Scorpio on December 7th is at 21 degrees Scorpio. And right. March of 2016, Saturn stationed retrograde at 22 degrees Scorpio. That's not as strong a trigger as the Mercury retrograde, but the new moon in Scorpio, just because of the fact that 2015, 16, and 17 had so much going on in Scorpio. Every transit that we're having now with Jupiter and Scorpio and this Mercury retrograde truly is triggering those things. So you can think about the summer of 2016, definitely the summer of 2015. I said August 21st, 2017, but also really as we moved through all of September and right up to the beginning of October, into the beginning of October, it was just like minefields set in Scorpio, in fixed signs, so that now we're watching all of this stuff come up about what was happening in 2016 and 2017 and 2015 with regard to Trump, Russia, because all of those minds are being triggered by everything that's happening in Scorpio. I want you to think about this in your own life. I want to think about, what did you walk away from in August of 2017? What did you get clarity on that you were just like, I need to reclaim authority in this area of my life. I need to dethrone this person or this place or this thing who has determined how I perceive myself and the world around me. What did you walk away from? Right? That was a really big deal. And now you are alternately thinking about things and perceiving things from the Scorpio perspective, from your body, your physical body. And what are the consequences on your survival of having walked away from that thing? For some people, it's been great. For some people, it's been a struggle, and it's laid bare for them some things that they may not have really been aware of, because when you're under the shroud of that authority, you don't necessarily realize the extent to which that thing was shaping and determining your reality and how you saw and experienced things. That's it really for the first 7 days of December, because, the next thing that happens, I love y'all. The next thing that's happening is on December 15th. I'm excited. December 15th, the sun enters Sagittarius and eclipse season begins. What is eclipse season? Astrologers talk about this a lot, and you'll see a lot of, God, I have like a piece of lint. Ooh, I got it. You'll hear a lot of astrologers talking about eclipse season, and they may not really say that it starts until there's like a new moon or full moon in the sign. But you know me, I gotta do things differently because I see things differently, and so that's why y'all here, because y'all know eclipse season starts as soon as the first planet enters a sign, right? So that means that generally Mercury and Venus are never more than a sign or two away from the sun, so that one of those signs, one of those planets, Sun, Mercury, or Venus, is going to enter a sign first. Right now, earlier this year, it was Venus, because Venus was speeding ahead of the sun so it could stop, pause, go back and revisit some stuff in Libra come September and November, right? But now the sun has overtaken Venus and is in Scorpio, going to move into Sagittarius on the 15th, and it will be the first to trigger eclipse stuff. What does trigger mean? Trigger means that there is a very important astrological event happening at a specified degree or within a degree range in a sign. And when a planet comes along before, during, or after that said event and transits, moves through that degree in that sign, it is triggering an event. So what we're going to observe and take notes about beginning December 15th is what is happening in my Sagittarius house. Don't worry about the degrees. Don't worry about the dates. What is happening in my Sagittarius house? Let me give you a quick rundown of the houses for each rising sign or moon sign or sun sign. Okay? If you are Sagittarius rising, this is your first house, your physical body, things that happen to you and actions that you take, your behavior, personality, temperament. So what you doing? Right? What's happening to your body, Sagittarius? Capricorn, this is your 12th house. This is this part of you that is inimical to how you normally are, right? This is something that may isolate you. This is something that may take you on a retreat or vacation, or put some physical or emotional distance between yourself and what is familiar. The 12th house is not the boogeyman, and it is not a horror movie, and it is not a haunted house. The 12th house says this place is unfamiliar. Place as in literal physical place, or place as in station in life, or place as in current circumstances. Unfamiliar is good, unfamiliar is bad. If familiar is bad, unfamiliar is good. If familiar is good, unfamiliar can be bad or it can be good, right? Solo projects, right? Solitude, retreat, 12th house. Aquarius, this is your 11th house of helpful people and guides. You get the jackpot with this transit. Who are the helpful people that are like, hey, Aquarius, I see you. Let me help you out. What you trying to do? Here's some money. Here's a phone number. Meet this person. Let me make this connection for you. Here's an older elderly person who's like, hey, boo, right? That's your 11th house. If you are Pisces rising, it is your 10th house of superiors and bosses, your own social or professional status and capacity for authority in life. If you are Aries rising, this is your 9th house of gatekeepers to knowledge, power, and information and religion. So churches, schools, imams, synagogues, colleges, universities, government institutions, etc. If you are what are we on? Taurus. If you are Taurus rising, this is your 8th house. This is your dependency, interdependency materially on other people. It is your mortality. It is death and benefits from death, losses from death, taxes, loans, debt. If you are Gemini rising, this is your 7th house of other people. This is litigation and court stuff. This is your significant others, partners, business partners, spouse. If you are Cancer rising, it is your 6th house of work, obligations, your job titles, your personal duties and obligations, and illness. If you are Leo rising, it is your 5th house of fun, love, sex, pleasure, children, fertility, conception, pregnancy, birth, sports, athletics, fitness, fun. All of those things are 5th house. If this is Virgo rising, this is your 4th house of parents, specifically your father, any real estate or land, property, your physical dwelling place of home. If you are Libra rising, it is your 3rd house of siblings and other near relatives, family, and familiar. That is in contrast to the 12th house, which is square the 3rd house. 3rd house is familiar, 12th house is unfamiliar. 3rd house is also travel. It is also your personal spiritual practice. It is social media and your commute, short travel, daily travel, stuff like that. And finally, if you are Scorpio rising, it is your 2nd house. Scorpio rising moon, this is interchangeable. This is your 2nd house of earned income, your own money, what you do to make your money, whether you can make some money, how much you got, what you buying with it, and what do you own? Everything except immovable property. So Sagittarius has been occupied since January of 2017 on and off because Saturn entered there, and we have been saying you don't live forever. You ain't got all the money in the world. You don't have the energy in the world. And you don't all have the time in the world. So what are you going to do with the realization, acceptance of those inherent limitations? You are going to make your life a living testimony of what you believe. Why? Because Saturn is in Jupiter sign in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about living your intentions and convictions. What's the motivation? What's your why? Intentions are not the what. Intentions are not what are you doing. Intentions are why. Why are you doing it? So this eclipse season beginning, right? This takes us all the way to 2020. It's a long time. I hope you're ready. Sagittarius says, are you living your intentions and convictions? Do you know what your intentions and convictions are? Do you know why you're doing what you're doing? Why are you doing it? What are your convictions? What are you convinced of? What are you persuaded that is true? And how does that inform why you do what you do in your Sagittarius house? Rewind. I just gave you what those topics are for your rising sign, your moon sign, sun sign. For most people, I would stick with moon and rising sign. It's going to be most accurate, starting with the rising and then the moon sign. So eclipses. Excuse me. So I've created this trusty little eclipse guide for you. And in this eclipse guide, I talk about what is Sagittarius? What is your Sagittarius house? What is Gemini? What is an eclipse in Gemini? What is the solar eclipse in Gemini? What is a lunar eclipse in Gemini? Why are all of the solar eclipses in Sagittarius? Well, all of the solar eclipses are in Sagittarius because it's time to walk away from something that no longer aligns with our intentions and convictions. Excuse me. Excuse me. So when eclipse season starts, now you're paying attention to what is happening in your Sagittarius house. Let's just leave it there. I'm going to turn the page here and we're going to move to September 21st. I'm a broken record. I understand this. It's not my fault. I'm just the messenger. I'm just telling you what's happening. I'm just giving you the dates. I'm just telling you what the significance of the time is. And it's just really not my fault that I have to keep repeating myself. It is not my fault that Mercury went retrograde in Scorpio and conjoins Jupiter in Scorpio 3 times. So that means I have to keep talking about this. I'm tired of Scorpio. Actually, I'm going to be honest. Scorpio's been really good to me. I know it's been messing some of y'all up, but you should book a reading. Maybe we can work it out and figure out what's happening. So December 21st, Mercury conjoins Jupiter in Scorpio for the 3rd and final time. Hallelujah. 15 degrees. I've got another date here. Mars stationed direct. No. Mars stationed retrograde. Pause. Remember 2015, 16, and 17. all coming back to haunt you and resolve and tell all your business and make you think that you remembered something that you forgot. Right. Mars stationed retrograde at 14 degrees Scorpio in April of 2016. That is so interesting because the last Mercury Jupiter conjunction is at 15 degrees Scorpio. So, my friends, what were you doing in April of 2016? I know what I was doing. What were you doing in April of 2016? Wow. I actually just remembered a whole lot of stuff that was going on in that month. Interesting. Yeah, what were you doing? Right? Mars in Scorpio. Mars is at home, was at home rather, in Scorpio. So anytime a planet is at home, it's doing what? It's the means to the end of what that planet represents. So Mars doesn't have to do Mercury things because it's not in Gemini, which is in Scorpio. It's in Scorpio. So Mars has emotional autonomy. It has the drive to act in its own best interest as a means to self-preservation. You see how that fits together so nicely? Planets at home are just so cohesive and I don't know, they just flow. Anyways, Mercury conjoins Jupiter. Mercury is what do you say? Jupiter is what did you mean? Did you say what you meant? Did you? Do you know what you meant? Why did you say that? Right? That's really about the size of that. I don't want to harp too much more on that because there's another couple of other things that I want to talk about. Full moon in Gemini. Remember, eclipse season has started, which means that every time the moon transits through a mutable sign, beginning when the sun enters Sagittarius on the 15th is triggering. It is laying the foundation for things in your mutable houses. Again, I got to plug the 2019 eclipse guide because it tells you what your mutable houses are. I just can't do that in this video. It's so personal for everybody. I did tell you what your Sagittarius house was, so, you're welcome. So there's a full moon in Gemini. That's really tough because Mercury is still in Scorpio, Jupiter is still in Scorpio, and so both the ruler of the sun and the moon are in Scorpio. So it's kind of like, yeah, I know you're trying to do this other thing, but yeah, this other thing is really, all that Scorpio stuff is just really taking a lot of your attention, time, energy, and resources. And all that means is that you can't really escape your feelings. Like, I know that you're ready to move on to other things, and I know that other things might be demanding your attention, and I know that it may feel like tension and conflict, or it might feel that your feelings are undermining your capacity to do something. But again, what did I say? Do not be afraid to feel. One of the things that I've tweeted a few times, including today, is that the question of Scorpio is not if what you're feeling is true. That's really the wrong question, right? It's not, can I believe my feelings? Are my feelings telling me something true, right? The question is, can you feel? Can you observe yourself feeling? Can you feel and not latch on to it like, oh my God, this feeling is so, feeling. Because you're doing this and the physical sensation in your body, right? The fear response is already passed, like it's gone, right? So trust your body and trust yourself enough that you can feel a feeling and not latch onto it. Because when you latch on to the feeling, there's nothing wrong with feeling. There's nothing wrong with fear. There's nothing wrong with hatred. All of these, quote, negative feelings that your faves keep saying that you shouldn't have. Like, oh my God, what's wrong with those people? These things aren't bad. But the issue is when you latch on to the feeling, and that feeling is whatever the thing around you or that you experience that triggered or caused that physiological response that you name as fear in your body is gone, you're still sitting over here like this, right? So I tweeted something yesterday, and I just want to share this with you because I think it's important as we're talking about all this Scorpio stuff. Jupiter transits ask us to question the stories that we tell about something. It asks us to consider that maybe a story that we've told ourselves, that we've written about a particular thing, maybe that story does not serve us any longer. Maybe it's just inaccurate. It's not true anymore. So Jupiter in Scorpio since October all the way through next year. It does take a break next year, but it's all the way through November 4th for whatever, 2019. Jupiter in Scorpio asks us, how does your survival instinct determine how you experience the world around you? Meaning that, excuse me, what are the stories, excuse me, what are the stories around your survival? What are the stories around your right to feel, right? And how do those, how does your perception, your interpretation of kind of your experience with your survival instinct, what does that say about what's possible for you? Meaning that, and I'm just going to be frank, I'm not here to tell people what they want to hear. I'm not Frank, I'm Dana, to be straightforward. I'm not here to tell people what they want to hear, and I'm not here to make you feel good. Even though I do that sometimes, but my goal is to be an prophetic messenger of what is happening in the sky right now. And so, fortunately or unfortunately, Scorpio reflects trauma. Mars reflects the depth to which we are in touch with our survival instinct. There are people who have been provided everything. There are people who never had to worry about whether they had enough. There are people who have never had to fear for their own safety. There are people who were raised and birthed into circumstances where the adults took full responsibility for their survival and well-being. And so they've never had to be aware of threats or be hyper vigilant, right? They've lived a life of comfort and ease, sometimes at a cost, but that's just what it is. But for many people, the adults around them abdicated their responsibility to be their external survival system, to be their shelter, to be their safety, to be their comfort, to be their food provider, their love provider, their warmth provider, their shelter provider, right? They abdicated that responsibility, whether by neglect, right? Intentional neglect, or just by circumstance, right? Maybe they were poor, whatever it may be. Maybe they're like the parents who are at the border of Mexico and the United States right now, and they didn't choose to come into the world in the midst of violence and threats to their well-being and death and murder. They didn't choose that. And so now their whole reality is shaped by their survival instinct. They say that it's more important for me to preserve my life and body than to preserve my familiarity, to maintain the connection to my land of birth. I gotta go because my land of birth is killing me, right? It's a threat to my survival and well-being. So there are many of us who have had this experience. And because of that, they necessarily take on a defensive posture, peeking around corners, waiting for the next threat, trying to maintain some semblance of control of their world around them. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong. There's no judgment on that. It's what it is, right? So when I talk about Scorpio, I'm a broken record, and I'm just going to be a broken record because I think it's just such a huge myth that needs to be debunked. Scorpio has nothing to do with sex, right? Scorpio has nothing to do with sex. Just let it go. You're not doing yourself a service, positive something by believing that, right? Because it doesn't match up with your experience. If you've got sidereal Scorpio, which is likely, I had a note about that too. Tropical Sagittarius planets within the first 23 degrees go back into Scorpio in sidereal, You've been well acquainted with your survival instinct for a long time. You have experienced the threats. You have taken on defensive postures because your life has depended on it. But what Jupiter does is Jupiter says, hey, you, let me reintroduce you to your body. Let me reintroduce you to your body. I had a dream last week, and this dream was so weird. But when I was writing this thread of tweets in the weekly forecast yesterday, I had this aha moment. I was like, wow, that was for y'all. I had this dream last week. And in the dream, I walked out onto a stage. I was in a play. And my character was a robot or some kind of somebody or something that had never had a body before. But they were like a full-grown adult. And I walked out on stage and my character was experiencing this body for the first time. And in the dream, I remember feeling all of these things all over my body and having no clue what they meant. Like I was truly in awe and like wonder of like, oh my God, what is this skin suit that I have on? I remember in the dream, like I had just walked on stage and there was some kind of trellis or something that had a mirror on it. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and I can feel my mouth like not even knowing what a resting face should look like. So I was like, right? Because I like my body, the body was new. I didn't know what it was like to have a body. So yesterday when I was writing this thread, this dream came back to me. This sense of those of you who have moon in Scorpio, who are Scorpio rising, maybe you are transforming your body. I can think of one particular Scorpio rising who's losing a massive amount of weight right now. But for other Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, sun, whatever your Scorpio placement is, Jupiter is like, let me reintroduce you to your body. Right? You've known your body as this thing that you've had to protect and preserve at all cost, right? Your body has been to you literally a threat detection machine and nothing else. Not a pleasure machine, not a fun machine, not a rest machine, not a peace machine, right? It's been a threat detection machine so that your defensive posture in life, both literally and figuratively, has been about looking for the next threat. Is this person safe to me? And so Jupiter and Scorpio saying, let me reintroduce you to your body. You feel that feeling right there? What is that saying to you? Do you know? Write it down. Just watch it. Observe it. Look around you. Is there a threat? Are you safe in this moment? Now, for some people that it's happening the other way, right? They are becoming hyper vigilant and aware of their bodies in a way that maybe they were comfortable and secure before. And Jupiter is just like, you know, the comfort that you've been experiencing is an illusion. I think this is going both ways for people. Not everyone is in safe situations. Going back to the people who are at the border, going back to people who are currently under threat from white supremacist fascist regimes in America, trans people. I'm thinking of specifically who literally, by the mere fact of being who they are in their body, their queerness, their differentness, they're experiencing their bodies different from the designations of empire, right? They are having to become hyper aware of their survival instinct because there is a real threat, right? So what are the communities, mentors, and guides that you take on in your life as a means to helping you cope, as a means to helping you deal in your body? If you are just now becoming aware of your gender identity, if you are binary or non-conforming or trans, right? You too are having a new experience of your body. If you have just begun to take hormonal therapy so that you can confirm in your physical experience, in your conceptualization of yourself, you can confirm that physically, and you can communicate to other people how you feel in your body in a way that who you actually are. Again, you are being reintroduced to your body, right? So what does it mean for you, right? That's what Jupiter is really asking us. That's what this new moon in Scorpio is asking us on the 7th. All of these things are in play. Now, December 23rd, let me just go back and see what y'all are saying. Look at you, Shani. Work it. Shaw Tabri, I'm going to come back to that. I don't read Outer Planets 5-star DRVM, so sorry. Yeah, but all of this is necessary. Okay, let me go back to where I was. I want to talk about Mars in Pisces. This is really important because if Mercury is still in Scorpio, if Jupiter is still in Scorpio, and Mars changes signs, that means the tone and tenor changes. This carries us into the new year, and I'm kind of getting chills, and I don't know, I feel some kind of way about this transit because Mars is going to enter Pisces and immediately be in mutual reception with Jupiter. That means that Jupiter is in Mars sign, where Mars is at home or boss, and Mars is in Jupiter's home. So mutual reception means the opportunity and willingness to work together to do something, right? Yeah. When someone has like a Jupiter trine Mars transit, um, so for those of you who have Mars in Pisces natally or Mars in Cancer natally, sidereal chart, Jupiter brings opportunity that meets ambitions, right? So whatever the ambition or drive is of Mars, um, uh, Jupiter brings opportunities to fulfill that. Now, the transiting Jupiter Mars trine is um, I don't want to put a judgment on it because someone messaged me the other day and was like, yeah, so when is there going to be a universally good time for everyone? And in my mind, I'm like, that really doesn't exist. It just really depends on your birth chart. But with that being said, when we look for an ease of tension or a breath of fresh air, Mars in Pisces is not completely put out of itself, meaning that Mars by element rules all water signs at night. So that just means that Mars has dignity, it has some power or authority in Pisces. Because Mars is at home in Scorpio, it's a water sign. So there is some kind of like, okay, I can kind of do something here. Pisces is experiencing things beyond the tangible and beyond the personal. Pisces is a water sign. Remember, water is about biology. Erase feelings. Erase feelings because that's not really what you mean. I know it's not. It's my job to tell you. No, seriously though, water is biology. And water for Pisces is how my biology, my experience of my own body, or the responses that my body has in reaction or in response to. Let me rewind. Let me say this again. Rewind, 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 rewind. Uh, Pisces is two things, right? It's experiencing meaning beyond the tangible and personal. That means being able to understand and comprehend something despite of or taking into consideration what one sees, but also what one cannot see. What one has evidence for, but also what one does not have evidence for, so that we understand comprehension or understanding to be not just, I heard what you said and I can understand the words what you said, but I comprehend something about your intention that is either communicated by or betrayed by the words that you chose, that is communicated by or betrayed by what I have physical evidence for. It's communicated by or betrayed by my own personal experience. So that Pisces says that I can feel something even though I did not have the experience that triggered that feeling. That's empathy. That's empathy. That's compassion. Compassion means to suffer with. So that means that I can feel what you feel even though I'm not in the circumstances that you feel in, right? One of the other things that is not talked about a lot, but I think perhaps it's just unique to sidereal Pisces. Maybe it's just not true in tropical. I don't really know. But one of the things that is common for Pisces. So let's pull this together with this water sign stuff, right? Because it's important. That's what's happening. Jupiter in Scorpio, Mars in Pisces, water. So if Scorpio is your self-preservation instinct, your entitlement to life and body, preserving your right to feel, right? Pisces is expanding beyond the limits of your own ability to feel. But also, Whereas people who have Scorpio placements prominent may have learned by experience to take on a defensive posture due to threats that they've experienced in life. Pisces learns to anticipate the moods and feelings of other people. Why? Because it's important for their survival and well-being, right? Pisces says, I need to be able to anticipate how you feel because for some reason you are not telling me with your words how you really feel. And maybe you are so volatile and temperamental that I need to be able to know how you feel before you feel so that I can make sure that I'm, right? If you are a good, happy mommy today, then I can be at ease. I can be calm. But if something about your body language, about the way you got out of the bed, about the way you looked at me, about the tone in your voice, despite what you said, if that's communicating to me that you're about to be wild, crazy, mean, violent mommy today, then that means that I need to learn how to anticipate that before you've communicated it to me with your actions or words. Why? Because I must. Right? I must. It's a survival thing. So all this stuff about Pisces being a martyr and Pisces being head up in the clouds and it drives me crazy. That does not line up with people's experiences, right? Pisces says that there is something more important than my personal biology or bloodline lineage, and that's what I'm connecting and tapping into, right? So that can mean adoption. That can mean that a really great example is, now I'm adopted, I've got a 4th house Pisces moon, but LeBron James, he has a 10th house Pisces moon, right? His 10th house Pisces moon, he was adopted by a family who was the father was a basketball coach. And that was really a defining moment in the trajectory of his 10th house, his career, right? So at about 9 years old, I think he was taken in by this family, right? So now, for the sake of the authority that he would ultimately have out in the world and in his profession, 10th house, he was adopted by a family, moon, that was not his blood family of origin, Pisces. You see how that works? I had a really long discussion with someone who sent me a message about this and they couldn't figure it out. But I had to explain to them that when something like that happens and you ask somebody, what is the defining moment in your life? Someone is definitely going to say that's a defining moment because it totally determined the trajectory of their 10th house, their career. Anyways, that's just me getting off on a tangent. But I wanted to explain to you what Pisces mean, because Mars in Pisces means now that my individual autonomy, my emotional autonomy, my right to feel, right? All of those things are subservient to Jupiter. So now this brings this sense of my actions, my will, my feeling of my emotional autonomy needs to connect me to something larger. So this brings me to the other side of Pisces, this sense that my feelings or whatever the planet is in question it needs to mean something, right? So you get into this thing of, say, that my actions need to connect me to something larger, that my actions need to serve my ability to experience something beyond the tangible, beyond the personal. In the 2019 Sidereal Astrology Guide, Mars won't be back in Pisces next year because it takes more than a year for Mars to come back around. So Mars in Pisces, if it were in the guide, it would say something like breaking free or getting my way by finding, or let me say that again, breaking free or getting my way by experiencing meaning beyond the personal and beyond the tangible, right? So that means that if I'm an athlete, right, that this is more than about, there's a sense of devotion and there's a sense of giving oneself up over to something, right? The other piece is that, again, a taste of mutable madness and eclipse stuff, because Mars in Pisces square the sun in Sagittarius. And by the time we get to the 23rd, we're getting really close to the eclipse, which is January 5th. Let's see here. Okay, this is the last thing I have on here. December 25th, 26th, Sun triggers 2019 eclipse. Okay, so at the end of 2019, There is a total solar eclipse. It's not visible in the States because it's happening at nighttime here, but it'll be visible probably like in China or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. There is a total solar eclipse in Sagittarius, and on that day, December 26, 2019, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and the South Node will all be in Sagittarius. That is the fourth and final time in 2019 where planets gather together in one sign, 4 or more planets. Right? They do that in Leo, Cancer, and Virgo, and finally Sagittarius in December. So this year on December 25th and 26th, the sun is going to hit that degree. It's about 10 degrees or 9 degrees of Sagittarius, and that is going to really open the portal for eclipse season and open the portal for the 2 solar eclipses in Sagittarius that book in 2019. You guys, now obviously I'm selling this and I'm making money because it's my livelihood. This is how I make money and make a living, part of how I do that. But this eclipse guide is really good. Sagittarius is, and this is a note that I had to myself. I said Sagittarius sidereal equals tropical Scorpio. Here's a little story for you. Before I started formally studying astrology, before I even really knew what astrology was, all I really knew was zodiac signs, and I was interested in that. So I'd read stuff about zodiac signs. I didn't really know what a birth chart was, or moon sign, rising sign, all that other stuff. But one of the things that would happen to me, and I'm sure some people have this experience, and this is kind of a dangerous way to do astrology, but in retrospect, this was a really important moment for me. I was always attracted to tropical Sagittarius, and they were always attracted to me all the time. However, everything that I ever read about tropical Sagittarius was about how they are just these gregarious playboys and how they're the life of the party and they can never sit still and they're always up and off and they never shut up and they're forever bachelors and they're the hoes of the zodiac and all of this stupid stuff. But in my experience, that was never true of any tropical Sagittarius guy I had ever met. And I couldn't make sense of that. So once I really started studying astrology, I just kind of incorporated my observation into how I would talk about tropical Sagittarius men, in that they are understated, they're recoiled, they're intense in a sense that they draw you in because of their privacy, not intense because they're giving off some smoldering thing, but there is this kind of privateness or secrecy or sense of what's really going on in there. How do they really feel? What are they really thinking? Right? Rather than this life of the party thing. And that is because, tropical Sagittarius is sidereal Scorpio. Like, shoot, Somebody tweeted something the other day. They were like, what's the difference between February Pisces and March Pisces? And then another person tweeted, they were like, sounds like your tropical zodiac is trying to tell you something. That really, if you're February Pisces, maybe you're really an Aquarius. I don't know. Anyways, that's all I really want to say about that. What questions do y'all have? Let me come back to this window. Okay, let me go back to this question by Shaw Tibre. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Shaw Tibre asks, when you say parents, what if you've lost that parents? I assume that you're asking me that because you are sidereal Virgo rising and your 4th house is concerned, or are you asking me that, well, yeah, it came at that point in the video. So I'm assuming you're asking me that because of you are Virgo rising. There are multiple significations for a house. And so the 4th house, if you are a Virgo rising, and that parent, your father or parent has died, or maybe you are Pisces rising and Sagittarius is your 10th house, which rules mother, and that parent has died. Those houses have other meanings. Your 4th house is your home, right? Your 4th house is your physical dwelling place. It is where you put down roots. It's your past and where you come from, your homeland, your motherland, or your fatherland. It is also real estate or land, so that if you are purchasing a home, the 4th house is going to be that signification. If you are dealing with any health issues, the 4th house is your stomach and chest area, right? So that if your 4th house is in precarious position, or its ruler, or your moon is in precarious position in your chart, you can be prone to having stomach issues. Do you guys have any questions for me? I'm going to be maybe 5 more minutes and then I got to go do other stuff. Yeah, do you guys have any questions for me? No? Mm, is there anything else I want to say? Just if you're just coming in, I can tell you that I will have 2019 sidereal astrology guides in stock the week before Christmas, and if you pre-ordered them, you can expect to receive those the week of Christmas or the following, because I'll start shipping them out the week before Christmas. It's taking long because I wanted to get the pre-orders in after Mercury started moving retrograde, so I wasn't caught up in the slow moving of Mercury. Um, and I wanted to start shipping or order them for printing after Mercury stations direct. Again, I don't want to get caught up in errors in my file, so I'm taking my time, making sure there's no errors, but also not getting caught up in shipping stuff because of Mercury retrograde. So I practice what I preach, man. The other thing is that at the same time, that week before Christmas, I'll have the eclipse guides in stock because I'm going to order. I can't really, let me go back. I'm going to order the eclipse guides the same time that I'm ordering the 2019 sidereal astrology guide. I will also make those available for digital download the first of the year. So you'll be able to get a digital download of the eclipse guide the first of the year, but you'll be able to order your printed and bound copy um, uh, beginning the week before Christmas. I've also added some other things to my store, and both of them are digital iCal files. I've been doing this for years, and last year I made the sidereal moon transits iCal file that you import into your existing calendar available for download. This year I have done that for 2019, so now you can have in your calendar on your phone or your computer, wherever, your tablet, all of the times and dates of when the moon changes signs in the sidereal zodiac, as well as new and full moons and eclipses. I've also included it in that a little guide to help you start tracking the moon. If you are a beginner to astrology, or you're looking for where to start to really learn how to put astrology to use on a day-to-day basis, you should download that moon thing, because the moon iCal file and the guide of how to follow the moon in your life, because it's really the best way to get acquainted with astrology on a personal level. You don't have to know which house it's in. All you're doing is observing how you experience each moon sign, right? For me, for example, Virgo moons are just my favorite because I'm so productive. I generally feel emotionally calm in a way that I don't feel upset or triggered, and so I'm able to really get a lot of things done. My energy levels are generally high at that time, so Virgo moons are really good for me. Libra moons are kind of so-so because I have Mars in Libra, and so for me that can mean that like me and my son are going at it, but generally, those are the kind of things that you can observe with the moon transits. The other thing that I've added to the store, which I didn't have last year, is the 2019 sidereal transits. So the 2019 sidereal transits iCal file has all of the sign changes of every planet, as well as their retrograde and direct stations, and the conjunction, squares, and oppositions between planets. Okay, so again, you can have all of the astrology of 2019 in your digital calendar. That's what I have. Okay, somebody asked, how would a sun in Gemini be affected by the full moon in Gemini? I really cannot answer that question because it is very personal to your chart. You may or may not be affected by it, and I can't really answer that question. And anybody who tries to answer that question is just giving you some real general cookbook stuff that just really may not be applicable to your life. Like, are you a seventh house sun? Are you a fourth house sun? Is the sun in your 10th house, right? It just makes a really big difference. With that being said, I'm going to go. It's 1:18, and I've got to go back to being an adult and tweeting and writing and editing and all of that stuff so I can continue to deliver content for you. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I don't have anything else to say except for get your fresh air today, talk to somebody, write in your journal, see your therapist, get some perspective on what you're feeling, because things are going to get a little moist later this week, and it might be a little bit too much for people. All right? Peace out, deuces, enjoy.